Welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast. My name is Chris Fletcher and I'm your host. Tech on Toast simplifies the way you buy and manage your hospitality tech. Do you need help untangling your tech? Head to our website, techontoast.community, and grab yourself a free tech audit. Find your next tech solution on our marketplace, attend our events, or simply say hello. We're here to help support the industry into the next generation. This podcast is brought to you today by Square. Picture this, all the tools you need to run your business seamlessly managed under one roof. From point-of-sale software and hardware to payments, Square's first-party solution integrates it all into one single dashboard. Beyond that, Square also offers team and inventory management, gift cards, and tools that will help you drive loyalty programs and marketing campaigns. So in a nutshell, Square streamlines your operation by pulling everything together under one roof as a single source of truth, helping you save time. Whether you're running a restaurant, cafe, bakery, bar, pub, or club, Square helps you simplify the way you do business and take payments. Square is trusted by over 4 million businesses globally. Get 20% off Square with Tech on Toast off countertop hardware with promo code SQUAREUK20. Visit square.com to use the promo code or to request to speak to one of our sales team. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Hacquoil.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, pretty damn close, yeah.
Founder and CEO of PinPoint. And Tom, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I feel like Tom's living his best life in Jersey. So you're flying back there after this, aren't you?
I am, and thank you for accommodating me. No,
you are most welcome. And are you doing that trip? Is that a regular thing then over here?
It's 100th flight this year today. So I do that every week. I'm in New York on Saturday. No, sadly I am counting, yeah. No, so our business is all over the shop. So yeah, I'm here all the time. UK is our biggest market, but we're quite big in the US. I'm in the US once or twice a month as well.
Wow, okay, you're a well-travelled man. Well, we appreciate having this half an hour with you.
No, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you, actually, before we get into it, and tell us how, I've just heard some stuff about bus drivers and whatnot.
Yeah.
You can tell us all about how you ended up in Jersey, actually. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, no, so family are from Manchester and Newcastle, respectively. Both moved to Jersey when they were kids because their parents set up the bus service in Jersey. I've been there since I was born, which is a very fortunate place to grow up, but fortunate to have also spent time elsewhere. Jersey's great, not known as sort of a technological ecosystem or a hub of the world. But PinPoint's based there. Our team is sort of distributed across, both Jersey, the UK, the US, and sort of even further flung. But yeah, no, it's great. It's a good place to live. And I spent my childhood there being a nerd and building things, and ultimately devolved into PinPoint, and we can get into as much or as little detail as that as you'd like.
No, I'd love to understand, because it's always interesting, right, with the founder on the podcast, just to understand why, you got into it. And was it just that it's quiet in Jersey? You had time on your hands, or?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll try and keep it brief because we could be here all day. But I think, look, Jersey is a quiet place, right? I was the sort of lonely, geeky, nerdy dude. I like books for Christmas. That was kind of me. I always enjoyed building things, programming things. I like doing that stuff. I think I left school at 16. I wasn't an academic chap. To build a little sort of web dev agency, I made websites for people, did some e-commerce stuff, built a little business that grew quite quickly, actually. It was about $1 million in revenue when I was 20, I had 10 employees. I was doing okay. I thought I was the sort of top dog, frankly. But that actually was 2008, 2009, and I was very good at making websites and very bad at managing cash flow. And the business blew up in my face, to be honest. And so there was a lot of learnings out of that. I think I was very fortunate. I landed on my feet. I went and worked for a cloud computing business and sort of was effectively like the number 2 there. And we raised a load of VC money and PE money. And I spent my life on a plane buying companies in the US. And that was a good learning curve for 4 or 5 years. And I think, to kind of cut to the chase, what I kind of quickly realized is that I'm not really that good at programming. I love doing it, but it's not where my talent lies. What I love doing is building teams and organizations. And I think I have this kind of very nerdy perspective on businesses. I sort of think of them as, I like organizational design, right? So I think of organizations as like variables and people and all these kind of combinations of things. And so I realized that my sort of sweet spot is trying to take this kind of technology lens, but apply it to an organization and think about how that plays a role in the future of work and all these other things. And so after 4 or 5 years at this cloud computing business, I was in a position to kind of go start my own thing again, and PinPoint was sort of the natural place to start.
It's really interesting to listen to founders working out, because founders are great at everything, right? Master of all trades.
Theoretically.
What's the phrase? I can't remember.
Jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that you find that finding that sweet spot. Often founders don't find it, and they kind of want to do everything all the way through their careers. So it's interesting you found it fairly early, I think, compared to some founders I meet.
Honestly, I've been really lucky, and we're in a great place, and the business is great. And I think, to be honest, the thing I'm most grateful for is just knowing what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I think it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would, and it's been a bit of a sort of circuitous journey, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do when I was like 10, and I think that's just so unbelievable.
It's very rare, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the thing I wish for them more than anything is that they learn that as early as possible, because I think it's just a cheat code for life.
There's a lot of time wasted, and I'm not dissing university, but there's a lot of time. Me and Case have spent 4 years there. If I'd gone into what I was going to go into, I'd be much higher up than I was by the time I left.
For sure.
And my son wants to do sports. He wants to be a football coach or whatever. And he's 17, and he's he's known since 10, I think, that's what he wants to do, and obsessed with it. Already got his badges, already done that stuff in advance of all the other kids he's going to be up against. So I think it's absolutely key. Cheat code is the lovely way to...
That's genuinely how I look at it. It's a cheat code, and I think my journey career-wise so far has been a bit all over the shop, but I am, as you say, super lucky to know what I like to do, and I just enjoy playing in this space. And I think because I'm not a recruiter by trade as well, it kind of gives us a slightly different perspective on the world.
I think I've just gone into that business only recently. We do like recruitment for hospitality tech, and it's very interesting. We're just finding our way, and oh wow, what a world to be in. Before we get into talk about that, give us your best pitch for PinPoint for someone who's listening and they don't know you guys or what you do.
Yeah, look, the ATS markets, ATS applicant tracking system, software to help you choose who to hire. It's a very congested space. It's been around hundreds of years. It is about the furthest thing from sexy software that anyone's ever come up with. I think we try and be the sort of sexy version of that, right? We're a young business. We've been around 7 years. We're bootstrapped. We've grown really quickly. We have a footprint all across the world. We do things differently. We care about design. And I think the thing that matters in this context is we care about the end user experience, right? Most software used to be bought top down, i.e. it got bought because the CEO liked the report and the end user experience didn't matter to anybody. I think now software in mature categories gets bought bottom up, i.e. you think about the end user experience first and everything else devolves from that. I think we entered the market at the right time, and we built our solution with that as the sort of goal number one. And I think that matters for everybody, but it particularly matters for this part of the world, right, where someone's trying to make hiring decisions on a tablet behind a bar between serving a pint. And if you're not thinking about that, and you're not speaking to people, and you're not sending your customer team out to actually sit in do the real world stuff, you don't get the problem. And I think we feel like we do get the problem.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the UX, if you want to call it that, for the generation that's grown up with an iPhone in their hand,
100%.
They don't want to log into some clunky system and get pushed left, right, and centre, and just and not be able to do it on the phone.
Well, they won't.
You're right. They won't.
You're completely right. But I think that there's call it entitlement, call it whatever you like. But I laugh the amount of times I see people on LinkedIn and in social media say, "Hey, I was going to apply to do a recruitment job at company A, but I found out that they use Workday, so I've revoked my application." People just won't. They'll make decisions around where they work based on the tools they're going to be forced to use.
Yeah.
And I think we understand that, and we care about that. We care about our reputation. We do things properly. And so, we could talk to the detail, but that's kind of the high-level summary.
No, I love that. And you weren't in hospitality is a new not a new venture, but have you come to hospitality later in the business development than you have for the other industries you're in?
Yes and no. So I'd say, with anything, what you need is to have some early clients in the set space to really feel like you understand. I think you can look and observe from afar, but I'm not arrogant enough to tell you that I know the industry well. I think what's happened over the years is, as the business has got bigger, we've worked with more hospitality organizations for longer. We've learned and actually kind of listened, and now we solve enough of the problems to feel like we can say we're a really strong solution. And so I think we have a good footprint in the space. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but we also have a good footprint in tangential sectors like hotels, like maritime, like cruise ships, like logistics and retail. Exactly. And so we think we are really good at what we would call in the office, in the field. So organizations that do a lot of volume recruitment, like that you would expect in this industry, but also that recruit complex folks sat in a back office with a slightly different profile. And I think we've been really good at that for a few years. We've doubled down on that, and now we see a lot more in this sector. And again, I think there's this thing, it's really geeky and boring, called time in market, and I just think you can't underweight that. I think we move really quickly. but you can't beat some time in market. And we've had 4 or 5 years now of working with real customers, solving real problems in this space. And so we feel like we can.
I think there's always a rush, isn't there? If you have a new product to come in, you kind of want to prove yourself very quickly and go, we know, we get it, we do it. And then when you're in, you go, oh, okay, they are a little bit different.
For sure.
And this industry is so emotive, right? It's so, and the way they buy, I mean, we spend our life talking to operators about this, but the way they buy is quite emotive still in terms of my mate has it, so I'm having it.
but I really want to lean into that statement, and that's why my response to your very valid questions might be really underwhelming. I think the reason is just that I appreciate that your buyer might not care that I have this feature on this RFP response. They want to know what other business in Waterloo that's in hospitality uses PinPoint and what do they think
sorry
of it.
about that. Yeah.
No, but like the thing is, that's true of a lot of the sectors we work in.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say time in market. We've been doing this for not long enough now. We're not 50 years old and terrible, but we're also not 1 year old. You're not worried about whether we're still going to be here in a month. And I think like we're in this nice sweet spot where we have that referenceability and that experience. And so I know actually what you want to know is, can you give me some references and can I look at some case studies and can I speak to some customers, and we can actually do that now, and that's what matters.
And I think it's like that social proof, right? That you kind of require when you get into like year 3, year 4. We're going through it now, right? We're in a year 2 and we're still people are like, what do you do? You know, so
I love the name, by the way. It's just brilliant.
Thanks. It's the one thing we did well.
Yeah.
One thing that
I'm sure it's not the only thing you did well.
but it's that social proof, I think, is the hardest thing to achieve, but achieve in a way that gives you integrity and being able to kind of grow in the industry. Yeah,
authenticity is massive, right? And I think that's the thing. I think the integrity piece is there. I think the authenticity piece is there. I think the other thing with software, which is slightly different, and you'll know it more than anybody, is a lot of the businesses that you meet in the software world are kind of default dead and very unsustainable. They've went and raised huge amounts of money from crazy VC funds in 2020 and 2021. And those businesses don't stack and they don't make sense now, and they grew very quickly and they're going to die just as quickly. I think we've taken a different route, and that's paying dividends.
I mean, I'm not even looking at my question set now. I don't care. Right. But that's fine. Do you think that consolidation piece is coming around the corner? I mean, I do.
We're already seeing it. And I think, look, nobody wants other people's businesses to die, right? It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, and it's sad to watch. But I think there's a lot of people, a lot of founders, especially those who are unlike me and haven't had a business die already, are very talented builders and very poor operators. And I think what you see a lot is people who had great ideas who went and built things and they raised loads of money because they thought that was the right thing to do, and they did certain things in a certain condition of market that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so those businesses are dying or dead. And I think there's this sort of zombie state that a lot of people are in, where they've still got some cash in the bank from that money that they raised 2 years ago, but that's going quickly and it's not coming back.
Runway is rapidly coming to an end.
And so we're seeing some consolidation in the market. We can talk to the kind of macro trends of that later. I think we've taken a much more considered approach. I don't want to give the impression we don't take risk, but we're much more risk averse financially than others because of my experience in the past.
I was going to say, but once you get burnt, you know not to stick your hand in the fire anymore.
And that doesn't mean we don't want to drive hard and go quick and do things differently, but it just means there's a bit of pragmatism there that's hard.
Someone gave me some advice a while ago about bootstrap companies, saying, look, you never, grow that way, learn that way, because you'll understand what your pound means in your business. Whereas when you've got other people's money, it's very different. Obviously, at the time, it's all very exciting. You're growing quickly, but I think very quickly you're into that zone, going, "Oh, hang on, it's no longer my baby." Now I've got someone else I've got to look after.
That's it. And I think, look, there's amazing founders who know what to do with VC money, and the business I was at previously was VC and then PE back. There's definitely massive benefits to doing that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of folks who take that on without understanding.
Period of time, 20 to 22, I think, where obviously the P word, the pandemic, blew everything forward, and I think everybody who could do QR code.
They raised some money. Right? Yeah, absolutely right.
Legally, we had to have it, so it was the best business model ever at that point. But you see it. We've seen it already, right? There's a few famous ones fallen by the wayside. But anyway, what have you seen in terms of recruitment market, in terms of what you guys do? Because you've been around 7 years. You mentioned the shift that you're seeing, I suppose, from where you are now to where you really joined the industry. Is there a big shift in the way that people are using people like yourselves to recruit?
For sure. Yeah. Look, I think when we set the business up, I think the thesis was that. And again, we try and make these kind of corny statements, but in my opinion, the right organizations think of hiring as like a sell side problem, not a buy side problem, right? They're there to build a brand and sell an opportunity, not like buy headcount or resource or labor or whatever they want to call it. And I think that wasn't necessarily particularly true in 2017, 2018 when we took the product to market, right? The really best of the best businesses were doing that well. Most people would not.
Yes.
I think the pandemic, to your lingo earlier, really accelerated that trend because it kind of put the whole recruitment market on its ass, right? Everybody stopped recruiting within 30 miles and started recruiting in time zones. Obviously, in the hospitality industry, there's a bit of both of those things going on. Talent's a lot more hard fought now than it was in the past. And I think people then rush to go buy technology to help them solve that problem. And so that's been a massive, massive accelerant. We've seen candidate expectations massively change over that period as well.
That's something that really interests me. That the people looking in, because I haven't applied for a job, right, since
me neither. Yeah.
So I don't know what it's like, but I imagine that experience has changed hugely to their benefit.
Depends, right? And I think one of the big things that worries me, to be honest, is I think what we actually saw through that kind of COVID period is employer behavior on margin get better because it was forced to, because the labor market was much tighter, unemployment was much lower than it had been in the past, and so on, right? And we're seeing the reverse be true now, i.e. that the market's getting back to normal and we're seeing more labor market availability. I think that there's a risk that most employers end up devolving back to the way they used to behave. And my strong advice is not to do that, because many will not. Do you know what I mean? And then the gap between the haves and the have-nots from an employer brand perspective just gets wider and wider.
I think particularly, unfortunately, in my industry, I think that's going to be really likely that might happen.
Unfortunately, it's quite seasonal, it's quite cyclical, and you see that sort of short-termism in the thinking, right?
It's all about this time availability or poor time or time poor. You know, the guys have a lack of time to make decisions. And I was in a board position before I started this madness, and I remember being in the same position, and the will to go back to doing it the easy way or the old way is huge. But actually, the ones that, as you quite rightly said, are on the front foot and are really doing some exciting things are looking continuously at the experience for the employee from the minute they arrive on Google. Let alone when they walk through the door.
They're just being intentional about what they're doing, and they're thinking about stuff much more strategically. And it might seem like that is something that's very difficult to do if you're time poor. I guess the counter argument is if you can carve out the time to do it up front, it solves the time poor problem long term, right?
Yes.
And you think about talent pooling, you think about insights and intelligence, you think about outreach and nurture marketing, and being able to kind of close that gap between an availability being able to close the gap between having a role and actually putting a bum in a seat that's very, very good at solving that problem for you is really important. And I think spending the time up front, putting yourself in a position to do that is very, very key. I think the candidate behavior stuff you referenced is really interesting. We saw this trend. So we process kind of tens of millions of candidates a year.
Your insight's great.
The volume is high now, which is, as a nerd, it's really interesting and exciting for me. But one of the things that we saw that really shifted through COVID was candidate behaviors change. And so because unemployment was so low, you'd see candidates looking for jobs, especially in hospitality and other tangential sectors. They would just apply for every job.
Yes.
And they would use aggregators to do that. And what's interesting is that what employers missed is that the candidates weren't actually looking at what jobs they were applying for. And so when you go, hey, I'm Tom from Acme Corp, I'd love you to come and have an interview with me. You don't even know what job it is that I've invited you to interview for, because you applied for 70 in 15 minutes. And so there was a little trick we would have people do where we'd say, right, on your follow-up email to the candidate where you say, hey, great, thanks for applying, come and have a chat with us. Put the job information back in there and include some information about why they still want to work for you. Don't assume it's a given they remembered why they apply. And it's silly things like that, but the whole thing flipped on its head because candidates just stopped caring about the brands.
And I think we put a job out, and I haven't done it since, actually, on LinkedIn, before we had the recruitment side of the business, for a role I was looking for. I had I can't remember, 900. It was insane.
Yeah.
I was just wow. I mean, and for someone recruiting, I'm just my passion's gone. I'm just going to ring a mate and find someone.
It's difficult, right? And I think what's interesting is we saw that volume problem happen at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
We saw this sort of lull as things started to kind of quote unquote get back to normal. And then what we've seen again is this kind of AI proliferation of volume applicants. And I think people think a lot when we talk about AI in the context of recruitment as isn't it great because it's going to help Tom screen out 5,000 candidates in 2 minutes. What they don't think about is that there's services now as a candidate where you can go and pay £1 and it will automatically create you a CV and apply for 10,000 jobs in 1 minute. And that, you then have to deal with the other side of the problem. Do you know what I mean? And I think people forget that AI is available to the candidate as well as to the company.
Yeah.
And so watch this space.
It's a two-sided coin. It is. And for you guys, you have, obviously everyone has a USP. I'm sure you've used this word a lot in your career so far. Yeah. What sets you guys apart, I suppose, in terms of, because it's a crowded field, right? You know, on our marketplace, I think we've only got 3 or 4 actually, but I know there's more, and there's a real conversation piece with a lot of the scheduling guys we work with, where they want to work with best-in-class ATS rather than this end-to-end solution. So tell us a little bit more depth about the product.
Yeah, sure. Look, you're right. It's a super congested space. There's hundreds of solutions. I think there's probably 10 kind of market leaders, and we're proud to call ourselves one of them. I think they each have a fit for different audiences. I think we're great for this cohort for a bunch of reasons. I think one, this isn't supposed to sound patronizing, but like we really care about customer experience. And what that means in practice is we don't just want to throw technology at the problem and hope that it sticks, right? We understand businesses are different. We understand change is hard. We understand people need their hand holding a little bit. And so we kind of do a lot more than just throw technology at you. We have a white glove service. Our customer success team will come down and sit with you face to face and work you through these things. We migrate you and make it easy to kind of get you up and ready to do those things. Sounds like a given and it sounds boring. But you'd be amazed how many organizations we speak to that say, I left my old solution because they were crap because they didn't have A and B and C. And we know that they did. They just never learned how to use them, right? And so like that support layer is really important. And that means 45-second average response time, 24 hours a day. It matters, right? I think there's a whole bunch of other things there, right? So one is we've talked about candidate experience being really, really, really important and getting stuff out of the way of the candidates. I think that matters at application. It also matters in ongoing communication. Yeah. We see ghosting be a massive problem for this industry, especially at interview, especially at turn-up. So silly things like how are you communicating with your candidates? Is that via SMS or is that via an email they check once a month? Is that in a format that they want? Is the language correct?
Email is... for that dead. Generation is gone, right?
We care about how you communicate with your candidates. We make it easy to speak to them in the way that they want to be spoken to, and we do things like automated reminders and automated nudges and all the stuff that you don't have time to do that makes the huge difference in terms of turning up and doing things.
You mentioned the nurture, that's where the nurturing comes in, right? Where you can kind of prompt people back into the
exactly, yeah. And so when we do a lot of that automatically, so if you've got roles coming up or if you're opening a new location or you're doing something similar, we can help you kind of pre-feed that pool from people you've spoken to in the past or people who are in your talent pool and things like that. So there's like a lot of heavy lifting that we do that you don't need to think about. And I think we try and look at things rather than just like, well, we've got some feature hidden away 10 drawers down. It's more like, what can we be doing automatically based on the problem that we know that you're going to have that you might not even think you have, if that makes sense?
It does make sense because often with tech, you buy stuff, you don't roll it out properly, you get involved, and then you end up having to unpick at a later date. And you don't even know. I often say, I think tech gets used around 70 to 80% probably to its full capability. Yeah. Apart from POS maybe because it's the one thing that's getting pressed constantly. Yeah. But everyone else, like really when you guys build it and you develop it and you sit in a room and you work out what the full product does, I'd love to see if that actually fully gets used in the market because I know from experience I've rolled stuff out in brands in the past and we probably got to about 60-70% of what it could do.
100% agree with you, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make but less articulately than you just did on the customer experience point, right? Which is that like we can build things in isolation in an R&D team somewhere else. But what actually matters is like, does the person leave the POS, go to the tablet and go do things properly? And the way that actually, the gap between 60% and 100% is me putting a member of our customer success team into your business and actually making that happen and being proactive rather than reactive about it. And I think we just see it as our job. And so we do get that a lot better and that plays out in our retention stats and the happiness of our customers and other things. And then I think the other thing is just thinking about integrations and ecosystem, right? I was
going to ask about that because obviously this is a key thing in our world, probably number 2 in the questions we get asked about integrations.
Of course, right? And I think what's interesting is that, and again, without being disrespectful to the hospitality sector more broadly, it doesn't tend to have the highest budget of any sector in the world, and it tends to be a relatively small pop sector relative to other environments. And so when you look at ATSs like us, the default choice from vendors is, well, we'll go focus on professional services and integrate with Workday, forget BizImply, and forget like all of the other kind of long tail integrations that you guys need and that are non-negotiable. And I think for us, you said jack of all trades, master of nothing. We think we are masters of the bit that we play our role in, but we understand we're never going to do what all of these other tertiary tools do, but we need to play with them and it needs to happen. And so we have a dedicated team that go do that. And because hospitality is a big part of our business, we don't say no when you ask for stuff. Yeah. And I think that often, sadly, because it's not like the thing we build our business on, but sadly, the integrations is often the biggest differentiator, right? It's like we're just willing to go one step deeper than everybody else is there.
The integration piece it's really weird. 2 years ago, you asked someone about an integration in hospitality, they're probably like, what? But now it's like on the tip of their tongues.
You need to do it.
And simply you mentioned there, great. Another really good example of someone does what they do, scheduling. That's it.
Yeah.
And they do it really well. Yeah. And I think, and I'm not dissing other scheduling people who are listening, but I'm just saying they're a great example of like, this is what we do. We stay on our lane. This is what we do. And I remember them asking when we introduced you guys, actually, they were saying, that's perfect. We want to work with people who actually staying in what they do, but doing it really well. And I'll give that example. If you break your leg, you don't want the head guy working on your leg. You want the leg guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think sometimes the all-in-one solutions, the worry is, from me, being totally having total impunity and integrity, is saying that, are you going to develop the whole product end-to-end constantly and invest the same amount of money in each bit and have experts in dev on every bit? Or are you going to focus on the bit that might make you more cash? And I kind of know where I would go.
I agree. And look, our view, obviously, like, I'm a software technology geeky dude, right? And so I'd love to build the best of class in everything. It's just not possible. And I think some of it is a resource constraint. Some of it's just an understanding constraint, right? But I think what people actually want is best in class point solutions integrated perfectly. The problem is that the integration is not really typically done well. Our ambition is to make those integrations feel what we would call native, right? So like as close to a single product experience as possible.
So like, you don't feel like you're into a different product.
Yeah, and so you should be able to stay in PinPoint for the vast majority of everything that you're doing, and where it's needed, you'll go somewhere else. But that should be a cohesive, single, native feeling experience. And I think if you look at the size of our integrations team at PinPoint relative to other people's integrations team, it's disproportionately large for exactly that reason, right? We just care about this stuff.
It is huge, right? And particularly with AI coming in, because a lot of people talk about how AI can link the products as well as integration. You've got the AI factor now that can kind of take your data into someone else's data and make something really meaningful. It's on the workforce management side. How do you, I suppose, because you can enhance what they offer, right? You can, I suppose, you're adding value to, because it's always like when you input something into a machine, the output's only as good as your input. You guys are the input, right? So you're bringing the onboarding in, you're bringing the new team members into their first experience of this brand they're joining is through you. How do you then engage with the work? Like, apart from the integration, how are you enhancing that, I suppose, journey all the way through there?
Yeah, so I think there's two pieces, right? So like if we're talking about onboarding, I like post-hire pretty well. The sort of this weird purgatory state between them being offered a job and them actually starting, right? I think like we to be honest, we've gone through several iterations of an onboarding product. We're really proud of the one we have today. The first thing we did was really fluffy, right? And it's kind of touching on the point you're making, I think, which is my observation was we were getting all these customers saying to us, we love what you're doing for us on the recruitment side, but the second we've offered a job to someone, the experience just falls off a cliff and it's terrible and they don't do anything. And so we built this tool to make it really easy to get them super excited in that lull space between yes to desk or yes to bar or whatever. And so it's things like, what's an online portal full of information? How do they get to know the colleagues they're going to work with? What's their README doc so everybody can understand more about them? How can we integrate them with the social side of the business earlier? What do they need to be wary of? What are the FAQs and first day woes and how do we tackle them? What's the training materials and videos and how can we do all of that? And so we built that years ago and people loved it. The challenge was that it was missing this really important administrative part, which is that's kind of the fun, fluffy stuff that's good for candidates, but it doesn't help me get them background checked and screened and DBS checked
legal,
and all that sort of stuff. And so the second version of the product sort of retrofitted all of that. And so now we have this bit of a beast that does all of those things, right? It helps you do all of the admin stuff under the hood, which really streamlines the start process. And we've got companies like Past Evangelists with hundreds and hundreds. Yeah, I love them. And to be honest, the one thing I'll just say as an aside is like, as a founder, because you've mentioned that I'm the founder a few times.
Sorry.
No, I love it.
It's a badge you have to wear, my friend.
I'm proud of it, right? But this is where I'm going with this. It's like, I love all of our customers. We've got about 800 customers now. We're really proud to work with all of them. We have like government contractor two-man bands in the US doing defense contracts. And then we have like pastor evangelists. And I'm super proud to tell my kids that I work with pastor evangelists because I can go to Harrods and point to that and say the person that works behind that counter used PinPoint to get their job. And like, there's something about this industry as a founder that I just adore because I can.
I don't know what it is. Well, it's the emotion of it, right? And I think it's the connectivity of it. And no matter what you do, no matter who you serve, you'll always be in restaurants and bars, right?
This is my point.
Part of your life. You spend your life in airports, right?
Sadly, we do have airport customers too. But like,
I bet you do.
We were talking about a company which I won't mention, but you were kind of talking about them before we started recording. Yes. And I love and adore their food.
Oh, yes.
And if we had the chance to work with them, to us as a revenue, it's probably a small deal, but just we'd be just so proud to be able to just, do you know what I mean? There's something about
it's what makes it's when you look at the tech guys' websites, they put you're the standard, put your logos on there, who you work with.
Yeah.
I do see those kind of people you're talking about appear, and it does make a difference, right?
It does.
And I think when you're selling into the rest of the industry and you can say you work with I call them like the darlings of the industry. There are like 3, 4, 5 of them. There are people like, Dishoom with that for years, right? Everybody wants to work with Dishoom, And we'll say Pizza Pilgrims, those kind of guys that are really... I think because they're doing something interesting, and I think they're potentially, God, they kill me to say this, but marketers before they're great marketers.
They know what they're doing.
They really built the brand lovely. But I think it's unique, the industry. I was talking to the MD from Access Group the other week on the podcast, and she's not from the industry, and she was talking about how she's so shocked at how emotive it is around her products. She's like, I find it weird that people care so much about my payroll product. But I said, that's just the way it is. I think we're a bit weird. I don't know.
But all I'm trying to say is I love it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we just absolutely love the space and are proud to be part of it.
And your product is like most great products is built on feedback, and you've already mentioned a few instances there where people have you've built the fluffy onboarding piece and then changed it. How much feedback are you taking in, I suppose, from customers and then rolling it back around into the product?
More than anybody is my strong statement, and I think it's hard. You can make flippant statements, especially as the founder of a business, right? And I think it's hard because a lot of stuff's subjective. You might prefer someone else's design to our design or whatever, and that's fine, and you're all entitled to your opinion. But
mine's the best.
Mine is the best. But I think it would be hard to refute that we iterate on customer feedback better than anybody else. And I think the argument I'd make there, and I keep saying this customer experience stuff, but we do just spend more time with our customers than other people. FaceTime, literal time, calls, whatever that looks like. And not just with leaders, but with end users. And you cannot possibly claim to do the feedback piece and to iterate quickly if you don't have that FaceTime, in my opinion. You can look at analytics and you can look at data and all sorts of stuff, and we do that, and we're geeks too. But you just need to spend time with people, and we do that more than anybody, and that allows us to get that feedback back to the product.
That's where it happens, right? And because data, 100%. I agree, is so important, but seeing it happen, or physically sitting with someone, watching someone use your
over-the-shoulder feedback is how you make the product
because you never knew that person was going to go there on your product, right?
It's just unpredictable, and you can look at even a screen recording of them doing it without seeing them physically do it, and you reach completely different conclusions, right? And I think we just spend time with people. It matters, especially in industries like this, especially in healthcare, especially in some of the more traditional spaces too. And so we get the feedback, A. And then point B is, if you look at our roadmap, bluntly, it's just split in 3 chunks, right? A third integration and ecosystems. A third, we call it sexy stuff internally, but essentially stuff we've come up with, new things we think will move the industry forward.
Founder stuff.
Well, I take no credit for it, but we'll call it that if you like. And then the final third is customer feedback. Yeah. And a third of our engineering team is just there, unscheduled, to be reactive to customer feedback. And that doesn't mean you ask for something and it gets built tomorrow. Sometimes it does, but more often than not, it's what are we seeing, what are we hearing, right, next month we're going to go do that now, rather than we heard that from Chris and 6 years later it's going to find its way into Q4.
It's impressive, isn't it? I think managing the iteration side of things with tech products, I wanted to deliver a very short period of time, but watching they were weekly sprinting and watching what was achieved in 5 days was insane, every week. Like constantly, and I that filter process of someone's giving you feedback and saying, "Is this relevant? Do we build on it? Do we park it? How do we tell them?" But that must be a tough trade-off.
It is, and it's difficult, but that's why we carve out time uninterrupted to do that. Because if we didn't, you'd end up with this thing. Oh, we've got a 12-month roadmap, and someone's made this great point, but we got to factor. And what do we lose to do this and to do? We just know that we're moving quickly. We've got a great broad base of customers. We're growing that base very quickly. They've got new things they want us to do, and we want to be able to make sure we've always got capacity carved out to be reactive to the best of those ideas, and we have done for years. And to be honest, that's a big part of the way we keep customers, because they feel like the product evolves with them as their businesses grow around them.
I was going to ask the end users, so you're working with HR teams, recruiters, obviously.
Yeah.
And are they what do they love about you? Because often you find when you've got a tech product, like I've got, on my phone, I've got certain apps I use or certain things I use at home that I absolutely love. What do they love about PinPoint?
I think, one, they love that we listen, and they can actually they do see and feel that we listen. Because we respond to them in 45 seconds when they ask us a question.
I mean, that's quick.
It is quick. I think the average in our industry is 3 days, so it is quite quick. But we actually care about that, right? So I think they feel that we listen. They see the amount of times, because we do like a monthly release cycle, so you'll get new stuff every month when you log into them. The amount of times on the first day of the month, I'll get emails literally personally saying, I'm so glad this got put in the product. I mentioned this on a call with my customer success manager 3 weeks ago, thought it would go nowhere, and now it's here. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So people love that. I think they love the flexibility of the product. I think we understand that every business is different, and what we're not trying to do is get you to recruit the PinPoint way. We'll give you advice if you want it and if you need it, but actually the product is quite configurable, so we can help you do things the way you want to do them, just a lot more efficiently, and people love that. And they love the ease of use, right? As an end user, I think there's really great tools like Workday that are incredibly powerful and complicated and expensive, but nobody wants to use them because it's just all, yes, 100, yes. But my point is that, like, they're very powerful but very cumbersome. And so if you're a time-poor person with 20 other jobs, you just aren't going to engage with the platform. I think leaders love us because end users engage, which means the platforms get used, and end users love us because the platform is designed for them.
And I'll be totally transparent. We use PinPoint at Tech on Toast. So because we trialed 3.
Yeah,
and obviously, we speak to a lot of ATS people, and and this is not because you're here, but we use it, and Tim loves it. You. And I think, and for me, it's about being nimble, right, and agile, but still being able to be robust enough for an enterprise business,
fast and flexible,
which is tricky, right? Because how do you do both in one sentence? But it does
with great difficulty.
Well, I'm sure it took more than 5 minutes to build that. Yeah. But that's the key metric for me in hospitality, because I always say that the indie guys have got the ability to have enterprise tech in a single site business, which I think is fab, right? And that's how great tech is these days. But doing that and achieving that through the product is easier said than done. But we love it, and we've been using it for a while.
I appreciate that.
I'm covering off. There's on my list here. I've got success stories. There's one for you. So, and when you look down the road for the product, what are you looking? You've mentioned the roadmap in 3 stages there. What are you looking at as you come forward?
A whole bunch of things, right? So I think, like, my view, without getting too like esoteric about it, is that the market's been really frothy for a long time. Yeah, so we businesses used to have 1 or 2 HR tools that did everything. Now they've got 30 that do tiny amounts of things. A lot of that is this frothy fundraising landscape we've both talked about so far.
Frothy fundraising, love that.
Frothy fundraising, there you go. I think my view is there's going to be some consolidation, and I think what that's going to look like is essentially a pre-hire platform and a post-hire platform. Your organization's going to have 2 tools.
Yeah.
We're really making sure PinPoint is the pre-hire platform of choice, right? So right now we do 70 or 80% of the stuff in that arena really well, and then we integrate with over 100 vendors that do the remaining 30% themselves. I think we're trying to be quite intentional about what lanes we play in that extra 30%, and what can we do ourselves that would be net additive to someone else doing it. So maybe it's a background screen, maybe it's better video interviewing, maybe it's better something else, right? And watch this space there. So there's a bit of expansion, and just making sure that we're doing everything really well in the pre-hire space. I think the second thing is looking at AI and the ramifications of AI, and that's so buzzwordy. And
it really is, isn't it? But
it is, yeah.
I mean, I think the general public or general ChatGPT is AI, right? To most people, but actually the machine learning side of things and what it could do for a lot of product, what already doing in product, is really exciting.
Yeah, so I think we see the role of AI in our product as less about how can we write a job description for you, because that's kind of commoditized and doesn't need to be done, in my opinion. And it's more about 2 things. One is, how do we supercharge rather than replace the recruiter? So how do we make your recruitment team super efficient? And again, we talked about past evangelists, but the 300 people, 1 talent person, right? Like, you can do a lot if you do it properly.
That's a common setup in hospitality.
I know, but like, if you look at other industries, it's not. And I think for us, we want to make sure that those people have got the tools they need to do their job properly.
100%.
And then the second piece is looking at data and analytics better, right? So if we think we're going to be the pre-hire platform of choice, what we want to do is look at, right, well, who did you hire? We integrate with all the post-hire platforms. How did they do after you hired them? Did they stay? What was their retention like? What was
I was going to ask before, actually. Sorry, I forgot when you mentioned it, about, because you were talking about the onboarding piece, and that everyone talks about the 90 days, right, in this industry, the churn of the 90 days. And I think being able to get more metrics, and that's where data is key, right, to understand almost where the nurture kicks in, because someone is dropping out the process.
For sure.
You guys must have crazy insight into that already.
We do, we do. And I think what's interesting is, obviously we build tools on the recruitment side to get you the right people. Somebody else builds the tools to look after them. But I think the bit that's often missing is the link between the 2 systems. Because what I can do is say, well, you hired loads of Toms, so let's go find you more Toms. But if the Toms all didn't make 90 days and the Toms suck, you don't want more Toms. So there's this missing link where typically those two systems are polar opposites and they're not learning from each other, whereas we've built this really nice feedback loop called a black box, where we can see what happened to the people we hired for you after they were hired, and then put that data back into predictive modeling to make sure we're hiring you more people that stay rather than that leave.
That's very cool.
And so there's some real, and that's like a role that AI plays that's actually value generative rather than being buzzwordy.
AI is use case, right? It's about what use case you apply it to, and I think that's a really powerful one that can make a difference. And I was working in a company previously where we looked at what happens to these candidates that fall out. Instead of just letting them go, where do they sit back in? How can you bring them back in again to the loop? Retrain them, even if it's some online stuff or whatever it might be, but they fall back in and then come back into the ATS and they're back through again. And this time they get through to the Tom era.
So we work with a really large organization called Holland America Group. They're in the cruise lines, Carnival Cruises, Princess Cruises, whatever. They recruit tens of thousands of people a year because their attrition is very high. Their average tenure is only a few months. And they do exactly that. So they'll have somebody come and do a season on a cruise ship, and then they'll put them back in the talent pipeline. They'll use onboarding to provide them with training courses, additional materials, and so on. They'll keep in touch with them. But like they'll keep in touch with them, and then when they've got another vacancy, the talent that they had on a cruise ship 9 months ago is now better than it was before because they provided the training and filled in any blanks. And now instead of having 2 opportunities, that person's got 10 to choose from. And like they're taking a much more proactive view around talent. And as you say, they're a very large enterprise organization, but what we want to be able to do is bring the power of that down to the smallest of the organizations and sort of help them and grow.
And are they using a very different product across?
They're using exactly the same product.
I know it's PinPoint, but is there a different? Is there different? I suppose modules that they're using that the others might not.
Yeah, modules is a tricky word because I don't want to imply that it's all priced and it's super complex. And
I use modules.
No, it's the right way to put it. Ostensibly, it's the same. I think what we do for smaller businesses is remove stuff, not because we don't want them to have it, but because they don't want it.
It's not necessary.
It's just bureaucracy and pain, right? If you can think of the level of like approvals and requisition management and complexity and like positions, and they might have 700 hires for one vacancy and they need to report on that differently. It's the same product. They log in and see the same thing at the same URL and have the same team support them. But there's a lot more complexity underneath that. But my point is that what we want to be able to do is work with past evangelists at 300 people and have them grow to 10,000 people using the same product with the same stuff because they can.
Yeah.
And I think we do that.
And I think that consistency leads to predictability, right? When you can use, I think this thing about churn on tech as well. Find a great product and stay with it and grow with it. And that's why we do this, right? Because I really want people to hear people like you who built the product. Because I think it's interesting to know why and to understand what's their motive.
I will say that I wrote some of the first code for the first product, but it would be not true at all to say I built the product.
I know for a fact
you would
you're
not want to touch
coder.
that. Yeah.
And trust me, if operators could code, they'd all be building their own product. They're frightening.
They not very well sometimes. But I'm with you on that. But I think that to your point, though, I think the point that there is this second order value of staying with a single provider for longer because the data picture that you're building up behind the scenes scales kind of linearly. And if you're talking about using AI and other things to do predictive modeling, the more you've got to tell, the more of a story you've got to tell, the better the outcome's going to be. Right? And so that's what gets exciting for me is that we're sort of getting to a point now where the de minimis levels of like required data are there. And we can start doing some crazy cool things for clients and sector-specific cool things because we can sort of map the market better.
And it's almost like the last bastion of data. The people side of data, I think, has been pretty poor.
Agree.
Until I left in, it's probably much better now than it was, but it was pretty shit, right? It was just there wasn't enough there, and what was there wasn't very useful, and you had mad retention stats that didn't really kind of add up. So I think being able to paint a picture like you guys are, and I've seen your insight on the website because we were talking the other day to someone about it, and it's really interesting, right?
It's
and that can tell you a story quite quickly about what your business and also how your brand attraction piece is, right? And what's happening in terms of people coming to see you to visit a job.
For sure. Look, I think the standard of benchmarking data in the industry is really poor, right? And again, like because I don't come from recruitment, like when we started PinPoint, my whole like sales and marketing play used to just be go insult people and tell them how terrible they are at data because I come from software and sales and marketing and whatever. I think like what we are seeing is sort of the composition of job titles in HR and TA teams change a bit. You're seeing people analytics now. You're seeing a lot more people spend more time thinking about that data layer and giving the business the kind of infrastructure it needs to be mature there. But I think what we're interested in doing is saying, well, now that we are kind of operating at scale and growing still very quickly, can we take some of the data that we have across our very large customer base and share it back into the market, obviously anonymously, but in a way that allows you, hospitality business A, B, or C, to compare what you're seeing and doing with others in the space. And I think what people sometimes do is they'll go, we're going to go out to market for a new chef, and what does a chef get paid, and how long should that take to hire? And they're looking at data that's 3 years old, and it tells them completely the wrong picture of what's happening today. We recruit a lot of chefs, so we have a lot of that data, and we can answer those questions for you whether you're a customer or not. And so I think what we're looking at doing over the next couple of years is just working out how to share more and more and more stuff with the market publicly, again, agnostic of whether you're a customer, because we just think it's going to help recruitment get better. But it's hard to do that unless you've got enough data in the first place.
No, and all boats rise with the tide, right?
Agree. That's the theory.
And look, very quickly before I let you go, you mentioned you're in obviously different markets, different regions. What's it like? As in, I know you're not always in hospitality in those different regions, but is the people space or the recruitment space, is there some light at the end of the tunnel? Because obviously it's been quite, played down or downtrodden, I suppose, since the pandemic. And probably, if it's probably happening before that, I think it just kind of expedited some of the poor practices that were happening anyway. But what's it like in different markets? Are you seeing the same stuff? Is that?
Yes, at different times and in different ways. So I think our two core markets are the UK and the US, right? Sort of imagine 90% of our business is in those two markets. I'd say that the UK... I'd say the US is better at sourcing proactively, right? So if you're looking for high-end, hard-to-find talent, the US and talent markets in the US are just way better at going and hunting for that talent, and they hustle more. They're way less likely to outsource that problem to an agency or an RPO or some equivalent like that. They just don't do that. There was some stat that there's more recruitment agencies in London than there are in the whole of the US, for example. Don't quote me on that, but
I'm one of them.
I've been told that many times. But the point I'm making is just that I think the way that they think about aggressively courting talent is much stronger. Retention is way worse. Compensation in the US is obviously a completely different beast. And so there are some corollaries between the markets. There's also some big differences. I'd say that if you're in the UK looking at what's going to happen in the recruitment space for your industry, I would just look at the US and think you're going to see that 6 months later. It's kind of the way I would look at it. There's many things the UK does better than the US in terms of people and labor and other things, but on margin, I think that the US is you talked earlier about how a lot of the businesses in your sector like to buy from local vendors or like to buy from people who are that isn't a hospitality sector thing. That's a UK thing, in my observation. Whereas even in the US hospitality sector, they're much more willing to take on a new vendor or try something a bit different. And to be honest, that's why we grew in the US earlier, quicker, because we didn't have to overcome this problem of people being worried that we were only 5 years old. They just liked the product. Now we've been around long enough, people in the UK like us too. And obviously I'm from the UK and I like that. But yeah, there's a lot to learn from the US. I wouldn't copy them outright though.
No. It's interesting. And I think we surveyed our database last year. It was 82% of hospitality leaders or decision makers will reference a friend in a similar position before they buy technology, which is great if your mate knows what he's doing. Otherwise, you're rolling that can down the road. Exactly. But anyway, look, super interesting. And we've got an event with you guys on the 17th of September, which I shouldn't forget to mention, over at Margaret Halls. It'll be great. We've got some cracking people coming along, actually. So should be a good day. And you're talking, I'm talking.
As are many better people, yes.
And then I think Alex from Visibly's joining us, and Tim as well. So it's going to be a great day. How do people get hold of you? Because I think obviously you guys are on the marketplace, but it'd be great can people contact you directly, or do you prefer them just to go through the website?
No, look, I have the worst second name on the planet, so I'm quite hard to find on the internet.
You love that, really, don't you?
Yeah, we'll put a link to it somewhere. But yeah, look, I'm easy to find. I'll give you all my details and we can put them in the notes for the thing. Yeah. So please, anybody can reach out to me personally whenever you want. You can go on the website. We've got loads of resources, case studies and other things you can go learn from, whether you want to become a customer or not. Come to our event. We do a lot in this space, and so we just love to engage with you in any form possible.
And I really encourage people to come along, actually, because it's I think it's quite. I mentioned, someone asked me in New Year what's going to be happening in tech this year. I think, and I said tech is going to start pointing to people a lot more in terms of doing more for people, in terms of making their lives easier, better data, all this kind of stuff. And I genuinely believe that's happening, and you guys are at the front of that. So I'm super excited to see it, and I think we've been quick enough to get you back on your plane.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been great.
No, lovely to meet you. See you soon.
Chris. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Thanks.